Turning the vision into a mission. This is the Global Mission of Peace with the GoldFish Report, Halloween edition, on October 30th, 2015. I'm here with a fun crew. I'm here with Lou Lee, our media outreach.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Sanjay, the wonder from down under.
Happy Halloween, all.
We have Steve, our European correspondent. Hello, Steve.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Hi there.
We have our guest with us, Bill White, with Healthy Relationships. Hello, Bill.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here.
And the voice of the dragon, the ambassador. Hello, ambassador.
Good day, everyone. And nice to be with you all here during this day. Today we have Bill White with us here, which is also a part of a global mission of peace outreach to the people. And he has a special project involving relationship and psychological issues. So, that's why we have him here today. We're going to talk about some different type of events, and he can explain a little bit how probably we can have a better relationship between the goldfishes in the goldfish ball here, and how we can live and coexist before we go out to the deeper sea of knowledge. So with that, I would like to, Bill White, if you could please introduce yourself, even though you are, now you look like, like a mullah here. I have to say assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to you. Huh? Very good, Bill. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Bill White. I live in Tucson, Arizona. I'm a specialist in communication and relationships. And I primarily work with couples, but can work with just about anybody on issues that have to do with emotional pain, childhood pain, anger, communication issues. So, and I'm part of the, got a project that I'm put together called the Relationship Healing Center, which is about training people in the methods that I use, and began to get this work out into the world more effectively.
Thank you very much.
That's great, Bill. We're so glad that you could join us. We know that, everything we do in life has to do with relationships, and it's not an easy task because there's different boundaries for different relationships, and these are things that are communicated non-verbally as we grow up in a particular culture, aren't they?
Sure. Yeah. It's not just what's said or done, but the intent behind it, the attitude behind it, it makes a huge impact, whether it's positive or negative.
I know we wanted to talk about a really serious subject today about the mass violent shootings and things of that nature, but we're really talking about relationships here, aren't we? And all kinds of problems. And we do want to try to make it a little bit of a lighter show today because tomorrow's Halloween. And also I think that we are talking about heavy issues all the time on the GoldFish Report, and we do want to remember that we have to walk a little lighter on our feet on this planet and take a little time to kind of be lighthearted, because this is why people come to you, isn't it? They just get overwhelmed and burdened so much with life, and they don't have the resources to cope with it and deal with it. And then it's led to, there's no outlet, there's no really good way to be constructive. I mean, other cultures on the planet may have better ways of dealing with this, but I think in the more modern culture, don't we have a problem with access for people who really struggle with problems?
Yeah, yeah. And as far as being lighter, the symptom of being free of your traumas and your mental pain and your emotional pain is happiness and play and joy. So you got to focus on the negative to get the positive freed up.
Well, Bill, I've had a problem lately, and I have, if you can help me with my problem, I have a bloody heart here. It's been ripped out quite a few times. Is there something you can help me somehow? You can give me some advice about how to heal that kind of bloody heart.
That's a heart issue. Yes, I can see that. uh, I don't have a lot of bloody hearts that come to me, but actually I do. But thanks for sharing your heart. I appreciate your vulnerability, opening your heart like that.
And we are vulnerable whenever we talk about heart issues, anything that's meaningful to us, and it's very hard to communicate that to people, isn't it?
Sure, it is. We've been shamed as people, as children, that we're not okay the way we are. We're not okay the way we feel. So we put up an appearance that looks good to everybody else, and everybody's looking at everybody looking good, and they're thinking, "Wow, I'm really not doing so well, and look how great they're doing." But those people you're looking at are thinking, "Wow, they're doing great. I'm not really doing so good inside," So, yeah.
Everybody just, sorry. Everybody just needs a hand, don't they, Bill? Every once in a while.
Let's see that hand. I couldn't quite see the hand.
Everybody just needs a hand once in a while, I think, and that would be all that would make things better. But you need to reach out.
Yeah, I need a hand up. Yes. Oh my.
Well, I see you're well placed to lend a hand.
Well, Bill, what do you suggest? When you have kids or you have people or adults who are really feeling overwhelmed with life circumstances, you know how complicated the mental health system is. Yeah. And it's just not accessible to people. And once you get into it, you can't get out of it, really, because they put you on meds and then they control everything that you do. And so what's the problem with access?
The problem is the system, just like any system, like the political system, the education system. It's all broken. It's bleeding, as you would say.
I think they need a kick.
A kick in their rear.
That's right.
With a severed foot. Laughter's good. I like that.
But this is the crux of mental health, isn't it? If we can't stop and laugh at ourselves and take and have a joke, then life is just too serious. And so these people are led to having no access when they have problems. They're led to extreme behavior. I mean, what causes somebody to commit violence against somebody who's innocent, someone who didn't aggress on them, someone who didn't, have anything to do with them? What causes people to do that? Is there a lack of access for help for people?
Well, yeah, there is a lack of access or help, and what they need help with is where there's help needed is in the family. And to me, the biggest problem probably just in our world, for every issue we've got in our world, but particularly, random killing, is people grow up with not feeling safe. They grow up not feeling significant, like they have no value, and they don't have emotional connection with the people in their lives. So they're disconnected. They don't connect to their heart. They're not connected to people. So, and they're miserable, and they grow up to be adults who are miserable, and then they, they get frustrated enough to either maybe kill themselves or drink themselves to oblivion, or there are a certain percentage that just want to take it out on somebody else. If they've been pushed down and beat up and invalidated and controlled, they've had enough. And they don't remember that it was, you know, caretakers that did that. They just know they hate people. And so
what are the support structures in society for people? I mean, religion is one way for people to go, right? And I know that the ambassador, you know, is such a scholar on religion and can probably point to many examples where, you know, religion can, if you follow it, you know, can provide, you know, guidance to, you know, what to follow, what not to follow, and what kind of help that they can turn to.
sure, that can be, things like that can be helpful. There are alternative mental health approaches, as well as there's inside the mental health system. Sometimes you can find something that works very well. And there's a lot of innovative things being produced. Fundamentally, for me, we need all of us to learn how to communicate in our relationships, especially when there's anger, when there's conflict. We don't have skills for that. We're not trained to do that. And Marshall Rosenberg developed a program that's worldwide now. It's nonviolent, compassionate communication. And his program is one of the best I've ever seen for training people how to communicate. Now, it doesn't address childhood issues like the work that I do. But it is a wonderful place to start. But we just don't even have basic skills for when we're upset. When we're upset, we look at another person and start talking at them why they're the problem, when we need to turn and look at ourselves and go, wow, I just got upset. What was that about? What triggered me? Where does that come from? How can I relate in a kind way and respectful way with this person in front of me? You know, we're not looking at ourselves, we're looking out there. So we just don't have the skills.
And pain is a big block, isn't it? Being an emotional pain.
Yeah, it throws us into fight, flight, brain. And fight, flight, brain, there's two basic responses. It's attack or avoid, flee, you know, fight and flee. And flee is avoiding and not dealing with it, leaving, disconnecting, isolating. So you got both things going. And until you learn how to get out of fight, flight, brain, when that gets triggered, you just operate from there. And everything you do in fight, flight, brain makes things worse.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, that's not a good place for people to be. But I guess that's your post-traumatic stress reaction too. Or is that something that's more severe? You're not talking about a normal. What's the difference between someone who goes into fight or flight, who doesn't have post-traumatic stress, and someone who does have post-traumatic stress? Is there a difference in that experience?
Just the severity. You know, we all have some post-traumatic stress. When we get triggered and upset about something, that's triggering something from the past, most of the time. And if you've had severe and chronic trauma, mistreatment, and neglect, you can go in there much deeper. Rage can come out, you know, wanting to kill somebody, wanting to kill yourself. And the thing is, we don't have outlets to deal with it as it comes up, so people just keep feeling, and all that pain just sits there, and eventually it's too much, and people have to do something.
Now, I know that Radagast is quite a ladies' man, so I'm sure you have some experience with communication and relationships. Rad, did you have any comments you wanted to make, or any questions for Bill?
Well, I mean, I guess having been married 4 times, and the last marriage I finally did get worked out through the relationship, and much of it was forgetting the past and starting a new chapter, because so much of the turmoil that crept into the now was from the past, things we couldn't do anything about. We could apologize and say, "I wish I hadn't happened," but both people had to accept that and then move on. And then we even had things where if during any discussion something that was a trigger from the past crept in, we would bust the other on it and say, "No, we have to make the issue about now." And once we did that, we got really clean because everything was in real time. And when you process things in real time, you can have real solutions. And so that was real. I found that I learned a lot. Once I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to be an aggressor. I just wanted to be a lover. I wanted to be in my heart. And so I did. I managed to get the person working with me committed to the same program because there was enough love there to pull it off. And once we did, we got into a really great place. I got to the point, I mean, I'm no longer married to that woman, but I got to the point because I wanted to be alone. So I still have a great relationship with this woman I cultivated all this with, because when I left my marriage, I didn't go with somebody else. It was really just to be alone. And so the relationship is still healthy, very strong, very respectful. The dialogue is always about the now. If anything creeps in right away, we look at it. Anything that feels wrong, we look at what's creating that dissonance, and we get to it because we realize it's not. We've experienced real. We've experienced what clarity is. So you can it's almost like somebody coming into your field of vision. It's very clear. It's very obvious to both people something is there, and that you just identify what it is, and it will go away. But you have to be committed. Nobody can come with an agenda of a past hurt. People just the past hurts have to be accepted. It's just like when you fall down, break a bone, and it mends. Your bone is mended, and you have a memory of it, but you can't. It doesn't work in the future anymore. So it's really about getting past your hurts. And the other thing is also a lot of people always want to have everybody understand exactly where they are, and I don't really think that's possible. All I really asked, and all we asked in our relationship, was to be heard, that the other person is heard, fully heard, and then of course the other person will do what they want. And I think that too many people want too much other than to be heard. They want you to almost buy the story or feel exactly like they feel, and that's not an honest thing to expect from anybody. To me, the only thing we should ever ask of each other is that we are heard, and once we're heard, then we can just deal with whether people agree with us or not. That's okay, one way or the other. But and it's to me, it's really about clean dialogue, and clean dialogue again is about discussing the issue in front of us, not the ones behind us. And so many conversations are about what's behind us.
Well, Bill, what do you think about that? I mean, we have, ways to cope, but I think that's great what Radagast is saying. They found a strategy to work against, and they both committed to the same principles. Isn't that part of what makes let's talk about what makes relationships successful, because we can, I think we have a longer list on what ruins relationships. What about the things that make relationships successful?
Yeah. Well, what Radagast is saying is he's devised a method that works for him and could work for a lot of people. But you have to devise a method. You have to get out of the head of the train that's just already in place about how to relate and how not to relate. And he's got a plan, and he was working his plan. So for one, we don't have a plan. And my plan that I tend to promote for people for a healthy relationship is there's 3 commitments that are required to have a healthy, strong relationship that lasts. And almost nobody does these. And the first is to address and resolve all significant emotional upsets or emotional distancing. And as Radagast was saying, when you're triggered and upset, it's something coming from the past for the most part. Or how somebody's treating you in the present is related to their past pain. So if you don't deal with it, in the past, there's belief systems that are running automatically, such as nobody cares about me, I'm alone, I'm not safe, I'm going to be abandoned. So if you don't address those belief systems from the past that are coming up, you're not conscious of them. And so, for me, it's about getting conscious, as maybe opposed to what Radagast was doing. It's about being conscious by going back to the past and going, oh yeah, I'm getting triggered because of this. Now I know why I'm getting triggered and what's going on. So let's now talk about now. And that may be a process to get to now. But that's the first thing: address and resolve and learn how to resolve emotional upsets and distancing, because that clears the way to have everything you want in a relationship. The second thing is you have to make a commitment to being kind and respectful with one another at all times, no matter how you feel, and especially no matter how you feel, because when you get into fight-flight brain, the fight-flight brain is saying, well, I got a right to yell and scream at you and choke you. But you have to will yourself to be kind and respectful. And when you're forcing yourself to be kind and respectful, you realize even though you want to choke somebody, you got to look for another option. It's like, okay, what's that going to be? It might be first to walk away, and then secondarily to take a look at, wow, what just got triggered in me? I mean, you may have to chop wood for an hour or something, but then eventually you look at, wow, what just happened here? And you get to a calmer place, and then you talk to the person in a soft place, not in a attacking, judgmental place. Now,
what's your third thing? Oh, go.
The third commitment is a commitment to utilize a skilled third party when you can't do the first two by yourself. And it is considered a shameful thing for most people to have to get assistance for their inner world and their personal world. And the truth is, we all need that. We all have blind spots. We all have areas where we just can't see the forest for the trees. So if you have those commitments in place, you can really have some confidence in the safety and the strength.
That sounds like a really great plan, Bill. And I know that, it's certainly easier said than done. And I know that just from knowing everybody here, I know different people have different methods of even letting go of relationships. And Steve, I know you've taught me a few things, Steve, about creative visualization and making this visualizing this kind of break or resolution that you want to see with someone that you're not having with them, so that on a soul level you have processed it and you can make that break. Do you want to? You had given me some advice once that I thought was fantastic, and it was about that image on the bridge kind of thing. Did you want to? You don't have to go into that, but I mean.
Yeah. Well, that was mainly for a relationship that had passed and that you don't have contact necessarily with the person, so you can, that sort of ties in with what Bill said. It's like a resolution. If there's a conflict or a disharmony in a relationship that happens not only in one event but over a period of time, then if you're living in a relationship with somebody, or you're having a relationship with somebody, then you can deal with it in real time. But that specific technique was for somebody who you don't have a good contact with, or you don't have any contact with. Somebody could be dead and you could still have it. So you could visualize meeting them on a bridge and saying, you could have a conversation, a dialogue with them, and settle the dialogue and see the dialogue, and you have peace within yourself within that dialogue, and then you part. They go to the other side of the bridge and you go to your side. That's one thing. But I'd like to agree with Bill's first 2 points, but there's a third technique that I'd like to add, in relation to his technique, is that I once did a weekend seminar called Imago. I don't know whether you know the technique, Imago.
Absolutely, sure.
Right. So they have, within the Imago technique, they have what's called a dialogue. So are you aware of the dialogue? I don't know what sort of...
Yes, I'm aware of Harville Hendrix's work, Imago.
Right.
It's excellent. It's been a strong influence in my work.
Right. So I'd like to tell people about that, because I've found that it's helped enormously in my relationship now. And basically, your first point is that any conflict has to be resolved, and you have to get back to the same place. I agree completely that you have to be in a state, not in the fight or flight state, but in a calm state. So you leave it, calm down, get into the cool state, and then you come into a loving space and then start discussing. And then the main problem is, and I agree that people carry over structures and patterns from past lives, not just past relationships, but past lives that have to be dealt with. And I've got other ways of doing that too that I've discovered. But how the dialogue works is that most people feel that they're not heard within a relationship. So they talk over each other or past each other. You know what I'm talking about? It's so the semantics don't work. It's like you're not locking into each other. So what you do is, it's very simple. You sit down in a quiet place, maybe in two chairs facing each other, and what you do is you let one person speak and you don't interrupt them, and then the second person who is listening repeats what the first person said. So basically you're empathizing through your repeating of what they're saying, and you're actually understanding it. And then the second person asks, did I understand you, or did I say it correctly? And then if the first person says yes, then it's fine. Then the other person has their go. But if they say no, then they have to repeat it till they understand what the first person's saying. And if you do this over backwards and forwards, it unites you. It brings you back on the same frequency somehow. What do you think about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's a
you must know it.
Wonderful technique and methodology. Now, I guess a downside to that is sometimes people are so stuck in childhood pain and woundedness that you can't even have that kind of communication without a third party sitting there and guiding you through the things you're doing that actually aren't working. Now, once you have a third party guide you through some core issues, then if you've got the tools that of Harville Hendrix's and imago therapy to sit down by yourselves and do that, it's great. But I feel like initially, I just think people are much more wounded than we want to admit and we realize. And if you don't have guidance for that, I've known a lot of people have gone to imago therapists actually even, and they're being trained on the technique so much that they a certain percentage, I'm not saying all of them, but but they getting trained on the techniques, but they're in so much pain they can't even practice the techniques at home.
No, I agree with you. You have to be at a certain point in your healing and development maybe to be able to do that. But the other thing is, what I remember also from this seminar was that the other tenet was that the main reason you are together with this person is because you have similar issues that you're being shown. You're showing yourself. So it's like it's like a
mirror, right, Steve?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's imago is the reflecting image. You're reflecting each other. Right. The whole tenet of it. And so you got it in one. And see, the thing is, there's no quicker way to develop spiritually than in a relationship. You could sit in a cave by yourself, living by yourself, and you'll become centered. But a relationship will show you through this mirroring in the relationship your own faults quicker than anything else.
Yeah, exactly. And Harville says that the very thing you need the most from your partner and what attracts you to the partner is the thing they're least able to give you. So yes. If you needed emotional closeness that you didn't get as a child, you're attracted to somebody who's not going to be emotionally close and going to have difficulty doing that. And they need from you somebody who's not bitching at them and pulling at them and hanging on to them because they had somebody who was too enmeshing with them as a caretaker. And so, but the good news is that where that person who became emotionally distant needs to grow the most as a person in their life is to learn how to be more emotionally connected, which actually gives their partner that emotional connection. And where the partner needs to learn is how to not be a nag and bitchy to their partner. That's where they need to grow the most. So
That's right. So the main thing is, the hope is that if you're in a relationship where you find that to be a pain in the ass or it's difficult for you, the thing is, it's great, because if you recognize that this is a growth potential and that you're being shown in everything that annoys you, you're actually being shown something in yourself. It's an opportunity. That's what it's about.
Yes, it is, and that's why I teach people, when you feel that reaction and it's natural to think, well, I was feeling pretty good until you did that, jerk. It's natural to go there, and it's unnatural to go, wow, look at yourself, turn it around and look at yourself. What had me get triggered like that? Where's the growth opportunity for me to see where my pain is? I remember with someone I had been in a relationship with, and we had ended it, but we were just doing things for friends, and she interrupted me right in the middle of a sentence, and I just shut down and hated her at that moment. And I'm thinking, well, I'm glad I'm not in a relationship with her, and let her, dropped her off and didn't say anything at all about it. And then I drove away thinking, man, I'm really stuck here. What the heck's going on? And so I used my own tools, and I started to look at myself as like, what did that being interrupted represent? And it represented for me as a child, I didn't get heard. And it's very painful. And so I shut down and hated people when people wouldn't hear me. And so I got in touch not with my anger at them or about this woman, but I got in touch with the vulnerable feelings that were there first before anger, which is hurt or fear. The hurt that, she doesn't care enough to listen to me, and the fear that, well, I'm never going to be heard by anybody. And when I can validate that for myself, feel the grief of the loss from what it felt like growing up, I did that, and so in 10 minutes, I was completely dissolved of any angry feelings or hate towards her. I called her up and I said, hey, I just got triggered by something. Here's what happened. And I reacted by shutting down, hating you, and I apologize. And it actually brought us together closer by me owning my stuff. And that's a high level of skill to be able to do that. It takes quite a bit of practice, but my goodness, we learn calculus. If we can learn calculus in a year, then in studies, we can certainly learn how to do this. We just haven't applied ourselves.
Bill, what do you think? I mean, we have to talk about some gender differences here. I mean, it's just a fact women are better communicators. And, it's pretty typical.
It's all possible.
It's all possible, but it's part of the problem too, because it's not helpful. I mean, it's what do we have to learn to bridge the gap between the genders? Because women are just wired differently, and they're not all bitchy, pain in the asses, as you were saying before. And I was, presumed that you were referring to women. But you know what? When men shut down, we can't get anywhere either. And so that's a big problem. And so we each have, the negative parts of our gender that we're just endowed with, genetically. So women just tend to be better communicators. And then there's lots of men that are really great communicators too. But I think when it comes to on the emotional side in a relationship, it's very hard for men to express themselves. And what can you do? What can you say to the men out there who really, either there's a stigma associated to talking about their feelings or getting help? Because, it said people say it takes two to have a relationship, but honestly, it takes one to ruin it. Because if one is completely unwilling to work at it, there's absolutely, you hit a wall and there's nothing you can do. So, there are many issues that women bring into a relationship, but the issues I think that are most common for men are this shutdown, lockdown kind of dealing with emotions or not dealing with them. And so what can you suggest?
Or raging, Yeah, so suggest, so we started out talking about, these mass random killings, shootings in schools and things like that. I'm sure everybody's noticed that it's just been men, there's not been women doing this. So I think I think there's a clue there, and I think what the clue is that men have been shut down to be vulnerable about being vulnerable, and until you can have a healthy vulnerability and speak your pain, your hurts, your flaws, it all gets shoved in and hidden, and becomes extremely dysfunctional. And although women are much better at it, at communication and such, they also, on a scale of 1 to 10, they might be a 6, and men are at a 1 or a 2. So we all need to learn, but men need to be taught these skills of communication, which requires vulnerability, and all that's just been so trained out of men. And you've got men who need affection and connection, emotional connection. They don't know how to do that generally with other men, even with women. And so, maybe a love relationship is the only place that they do that. And if they can't get it there, then some of these men are men who have killed people, have been people who couldn't connect with women. It was their last resort to have a relationship, and they couldn't even do that.
So when men aggress, what do you think about the theory about those that are breastfed as infants and those who aren't? Is there a lack of bond and connection, and do men keep repeating that throughout their life? Or there's been some news about that recently. Is there something you know about that you could share with us?
No, that wouldn't be like an area that I've really explored, but I think it points to, when there's a lack of bonding, emotional connection, being thought well of. I mean, I know it's hard being a parent, but if you're, let's say, changing a diaper and you're thinking, oh, yuck, and you're so much trouble, well, that child picks up that information that I'm yuck and trouble. So
we pick up everything, we learn everything, our surroundings, and we're conditioned by our society. It's chicken and egg, isn't it? I mean, how can we change if our society doesn't have, if this, what comes first? Yeah. Look, the thing for me, it all boils down to love and fear. So I think, and also responsibility. We have to take responsibility for ourselves in a relationship, and that goes for us in society as well. As we have to, as a society, take responsibility for ourselves. And then I think things will change immediately rather than pointing fingers. It's more an immature thing. A child will point a finger quicker at somebody else than look at themselves. So it's a maturity.
Yeah, I think they may grow up.
Also, I would like to say something here. Is that when we're talking about violence and not expressing feelings and not being able to communicate and so on and so on. And sometimes you see, like, for example, women, like you said, they're good communicators and basically just screaming and shouting. Basically, the man will not be able to, in any way be able to break through this screaming and shouting. And what happens is that most of the time, as you well know, they'll take to violence instead. And it's like people says that, I would not be able to be a murderer. And actually, when it comes to love and relationship, you always have a potential murderer in everyone. And basically, when men do not, or in some cases also women, but when they cannot anymore deal with it in a constructive dialogue, then basically violence comes in, and violence can lead to, homicides. That doesn't mean that, this is homicidal people, but during this heat of the movement, we have seen in many cases women being killed, and even men, and even children. And how to deal how to deal with this? Because I don't believe that medicine is the solution. As you see that all the time. For example, in Western countries, that as soon as you go to a psychologist to talk about some issues, the only thing you will leave with after 5-15-minute discussion is probably a medication. And that is not solving the problems. It's suppressing maybe a symptom, but it's not solving the problem. And so I think this is an issue. And also, like, I would like you, if you could also address, Bill, is that in the old days we said that many of the psychological symptoms were basically based on demonic influence and demon possession and so on and so on. Like many people say, that suddenly in the heat of a moment, something comes over me which I can't control and do something that they, have to regret for the rest of their life. And I mean, consequence of killing someone can be lifetime in prison. So, and like we talked about all these murders and killings, and we saw here this IKEA killing. This man was sentenced today to lifetime in prison. He rebelled and was frustrated because he was extradited from his refugee case and basically killed two innocent people. And now he has to spend the rest of his life behind, in a little room. And this is, a serious issues that we don't look into many times, is because women and men, when they can't deal anymore with communication, always leads to violence or worse things, even suicides. Could you address these things? Thank you very much.
Sure. Well, we have to ongoingly release our pains, our anger, our fears, our conflicts. If you don't ongoingly do that, then it builds up where you take a machete to some kids at a school, that's or kill yourself, or like I said, or use some kind of drug or something to medicate your pain.
What else can we do to cope? I mean, I think everyone needs an outlet. And is there something specific? I mean, for myself, I use music. So instead of, when I can, I try not to bring it into my life. I try to express it creatively, so it's there in their creativity. And I have something to share with everybody if they want to hear it before we close today. But, when you're an artist, you can express yourself creatively that way, and people who might not have that creative outlet. So how do people express that in a healthy way? Is there a good suggestion?
Well, I'm just kind of a fundamentalist about things. Certainly, you can do things like music or sports or something or journaling. A lot of things are good. If you're not, however, if you really find you have issues and problems, if you're not dealing with them head on, getting to the root of them, which I consider most of it childhood, you just won't get there. I mean, and it's not just that we've been abused or mistreated as children, but there's a big thing that we've been neglected or treated like we're not significant. A real short story. When I was with a woman, we took a boy who was 7 years old, living in a drug and angry family, and we took him for a weekend to go up in the mountains and do things together. And when we brought him back home, he jumped out of the car, and his dad came outside, and he rushed to his dad and said, "We went up to a mountain." And his dad was upset about something, so he just pushed him away and came talk to us about what he was upset about. And I watched the downcast look on that boy, which said, "Doesn't matter that you had an amazing experience, you're not important." And that boy won't remember that. Somebody ask him, "How was your childhood?" And he'll say, "Oh, it's good," but they won't remember that he was treated like that way over and over again.
Yeah, it's a tape loop that goes on in the head and says, I'm not important. It's a little voice in the head that screws you around. Look, the thing is, I feel that most of society is disconnected from their emotions. And so if you're disconnected from your emotions, you have no way of processing them. So the thing is, I even believe one psychologist called it emotional. So it is, if a child falls down, you say, and it starts crying, and you say, we're
having a little internet problem here. Hold on.
If a child falls down and you say, you're crying, just you disconnect the child from. If you say to the child, I know it hurts you, and I feel for you, and please, it's okay to cry.
Yeah, I'm getting
It's
the
like a
message.
connection.
I'm getting the message. You're breaking up quite a bit, and I think your message is.
So there's a connection to the emotion, to the event.
Yeah. You're breaking up, Steve. We're having a little internet connection problem, and
Okay.
you keep freezing. I'm sorry.
All right, that's okay.
Keep freezing. I didn't know if Sanjay had something he wanted to comment on while we're on this subject.
Yes,
Let me just see if Sanjay is with us. I'm sorry, Steve. It was breaking up so much.
That's okay.
We'll restore it, hopefully. Yeah, Sanjay.
Yeah. Well, I had a good session with Bill one day. We did 8 hours on talking about this. If anyone's qualified and knows what they're doing, Bill is definitely. And a little secret for those that Bill has a twin brother who looks exactly like him on this work that he's doing, helping the shift and change from the old paradigm to the new paradigm. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's great. And you know, Sanjay always posts really great, inspiring messages. And I think that it's good to have that around us all the time to remind us. Like we're being a little silly today dressing up because we have to learn to walk a little bit more lightly and not take everything so intensely, so seriously. In fact, you know, I think even it was you know, referred to in the Bible that Jesus, you know, himself said that we need to not take ourselves so seriously. By all means, take our work seriously, but not take ourselves so seriously that we, you know, can't enjoy life and enjoy this journey. It's a difficult one for all of us. And, you know, we do need to try to find a way to enjoy parts, you know, some of it sometimes, which is why we're trying to be a little bit lighthearted today. Because it's a really strong message. It happens to be Halloween tomorrow, but the message we're talking about today is about when you get to that point where you feel like you can't take it anymore. And let me say this, Bill, if there's a viewer watching this right now who is contemplating doing something that could hurt themselves or someone else, if you could reach that person right now, what would you tell them?
Louisa, just one thing that we need to make it makes a big difference is like just when we're going through life, just strangers sometimes, just by asking, are you okay? Because sometimes people are just in that mind frame that are going to do something totally wrong and hurtful to themselves, but by us asking, this is a true story where the person actually, by someone actually asking, he felt he's no longer alone. There's someone that cares and stopped going down the path of committing suicide.
That's great, Sanjay. That you actually ask somebody and they'll stop and say, my goodness, somebody actually cares enough to ask me how I'm feeling or what I'm thinking. Or and we saw this the other day, I think, on Facebook. There was a bus driver who saw a woman, I think in China, who was about to jump off a bridge, and he stopped. He stopped his bus, opened the door, jumped out, didn't know her from Adam, and saved her life. So what do you think about that, Bill? If somebody right now is contemplating something that's serious, that's going to harm themselves or somebody, if you could reach that person right now, what would you tell them?
Well, I'd validate their pain. You're a hurt person in a hurt world. You know, you're not the only one going through this. 3,000 people in America kill themselves a day, and 25 times more than that attempt to kill themselves in one day. No, sorry, a month. Sorry, it's a month, but that's a lot of people. So there's a lot of pain out there. If you can have the courage to admit your pain, to ask for help, there are people who can be there for you. Some people aren't good at all when you're admitting your pain, but you may have to go to more than one person, whether family member or professional, whatever. But there is a way out. I mean, I'll have you post a link to someone who attempted suicide, who did a YouTube video on what she discovered in her experience of attempting suicide, and she has a real strong message for people. to give them hope. And it's a big topic to be able to answer that, question. But and as far as wanting to kill people, I don't blame you. I don't blame you for wanting to kill people the way you've probably been treated. Uh, Anybody would want to kill somebody. We probably all had desire to kill people. So just validate that pain and start the healing process.
That's excellent. That's good. And we need to reach out to them, though. I mean, is there an 800 number? Do you know of a particular number? Is there like a suicide prevention hotline number, or is there in different countries, or at least in the United States, or whatever? Because you're in the United States, so since this is an international video, it's posted all over the world, even Antarctica, which is like, who's there anyway to get it? I don't know. But we have a group down there that we post to. And we welcome them. We're happy that they're joining us, and you should let us know who you are and what you do down there, because it's a cold place. But what would you suggest? Is there some place that the people can go to, do you think, like right now, if they need to do that?
Yeah, you can Google international suicide prevention or local whatever, and there will be numbers and people to call. You got to get yourself expressed and listened to, for one. That's where it starts, and we go through difficult life experiences, and it's not always a quick fix, but it can soften the pain and the distress, and just keep taking one step at a time.
What about the idea of just saying, wait until tomorrow and see how you feel tomorrow? Give yourself another day, and just when you think you can't take another day, just give yourself one more day, and keep saying that each day, because sometimes the goal sometimes is just to make it to the end of the day. And when you're in that kind of pain, when you're in that kind of emotional pain and anguish, I mean, we're talking about people who are in anguish. It's an unbearable anguish. Yeah. And to take their life or to go and hurt somebody else. I mean, there's also psychopaths who obviously can go hurt somebody else. We're not talking about that, although we should be talking about that. But those are much more difficult to deal with. And like the ambassador said, I mean, there's real demon possession. And, since we're on that subject, we are going to have a very special guest. I just wanted to make sure that we do this. We're going to have a very special guest with us on Monday, who is the Reverend Manning, Dr. Manning, Pastor Manning, who he talks about this. I mean, he talks about demon possession. He talks about it in our political leaders. And he is just hysterical. He really calls it like he sees it. He's not always, his opinions are not always very popular, but the man means well, and he's a man on a mission, and we want to hear what he has to say. But he definitely deals with this idea of possession. And, most people don't know anything about it and aren't aware that they're possessed. So what would you say about that? I mean, do you have an exorcism hotline that you can, what do people do if you know somebody, who you really think is maybe demon possessed because they're just so incredibly erratic and not themselves, and something could happen. I mean, there's really demon possession in the world. And what do you suggest, Bill? I don't know how often you come in contact with that in your practice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know for sure if it's demons or if it's just the pain that's thrown people in their fight flight brain, and I can't say for sure, but the reaction is often the same. I mean, there's psychics, there's energy healers, the spiritualists that can address things of that nature. A lot of, I mean, that's part of my world is spiritual, but I guess a lot of people wouldn't know that there's actually somebody who could connect on a spiritual level with what's going on with them.
Well, I've never thought of dialing an exorcist, but if I dial an exorcist, but
you can start a new business, Steve. Really good idea.
Dial a clown.
There you go, dial a clown.
It's scary business, but I think prayer helps a lot. I mean, prayer has helped me in many situations because you're putting a strong thought form out into the universe, and if you pray for answers, or pray for help, you'll certainly find it. That's always worked for me eventually.
Yeah, that ought to be our first and last resort. If nothing else works, certainly turn to spiritual guidance. You may not feel that it's coming, but if you ask, if you want it, if you talk what you need, if you pray,
if you want it enough, it'll happen.
Yeah.
I think the ambassador has said he speaks such wisdom, and if you listen to the things that he says, he had said once that you follow your parents in all the good things that they do and not the bad things, and that's really such great advice. And if the ambassador wants to elaborate on that, because that's real wonderful wisdom to really follow.
No, you see, it's always stated in spiritualism that you should obey your parents and you should do what your parents do. And parents always want the kids to do as they do. But, and sometimes you do things that you actually don't want your kids to do. You understand? And I believe that you should follow your parents in everything that's good. And I think that following people in everything that's good is a benefit for you. Okay? And, and many times you see in schools for kids, they're feeling pressured to do what other kids are doing. And sometimes they think it's against their own will and sometimes against their own conscience that doesn't feel right to do it. And, in the life that I lived, which is now coming probably to its middle part, I hope, I have been through a lot of special events in my life, and also a lot of trauma. I have missed people, lost people that been very close to me. I have seen the unseen. I have definitely had connections with the Creator, and at the same time, I have done things that is not morally correct. I have done things that you shouldn't do to other people too, and at some point it was a part of my job even. And that doesn't justify things. That's why I many times, in my teachings, I say that, we're talking about the devil and try to blame the devil for everything. But I believe that we have a devil inside of ourselves all the time. We are both good and evil. And that we can take these decisions ourselves, what we want to do and what we not want to do. And, I had an incident yesterday. One of my former colleagues and soldiers and brothers in arms, as we can say, passed away yesterday. And it was a very sad thing because it reflected a lot of my own thoughts and fears and my phobias, basically, that I received after my poisoning when I was almost killed. And I wanted to complete the mission, and I wanted to see the fruit of the mission. And yesterday, when the fruit of the mission was completed, and everything that we've been doing now for all these years has been finalized, and finally we're going to build up the new era, and the whole plan and the whole struggle for all these years finally was finished, this man who was a part of it and supposed to have a great reward for it passed away the same day. And I thought that was, it was for me yesterday very traumatizing, especially seeing the suffering of his family. But also because I know his dreams, I know his visions, what he wanted to do after this mission was finished and what he wanted to do with his family and so on and so on. And he asked me that, not to forget him. And that is one thing that I will never do, is to forget my people. And so I think this is it's interesting we're talking about human relations today, and living a life is not easy. Having a relationship is not easy. And the problem that many people doesn't realize is that in a relationship, it's not all about me. Because what you see most of the time with people, especially women, is like me, I, me all the time. And the situation is this way, is that it's important that you take a look at yourself in the mirror. Okay? Like we said before, it's not one person's fault that two people are fighting. It's never. And if we can acknowledge that, and that we can acknowledge what type of mistakes did I do, like you said, you went through your journey there with your wife, why she get upset, why she did what she did, and you confronted it. But the problem is this way. I can see the errors in all my failed relationships. I can see what I led to, and with that, I can hope that I will not make the same mistakes again. But in these mistakes you did in life, you hurt people, and that's why you have to ask for forgiveness to this person that you hurted. Some people doesn't want to take it. I mean, but still, you should offer that apology. And I think that in these times that we are living today, and just watching the Republican debate at CNN, it was traumatizing. I mean, the level of ignorance and the level of retardation, even, and the level of when I see it, I just feel like America probably is one of the most dangerous nations on the planet, because all this fear-based hate that is underlying in these people, that they need to be healed. We need to reach out to people and heal them. The solution is not war. Solution is not more provocation. Solution is not more insults. The solution is, to basically ask for forgiveness and basically embrace your brother and sister and try to understand. And people say, we have to integrate people. No, we have to include people. Okay? We should not force people to be something that they're not, but we should be inclusive to these people. Okay? And I think that's, the greatest message for us as humans is that to learn to have patience. Most people don't have patience in their relationships either. And that's why the relationship is ending up, because some of us do not have patience to go through the whole struggle. And when we talk about demonic possessions, and I have seen that many times, and demonic influence, which is another thing. And that's when an outside thought comes into you that you don't really control and start interfering. And that is a very real situation. That's a part of the unseen thing that you need to deal with in a spiritual manner. And I think that all these things are things that we should go more deeper into, Bill, in the future, and to try to help people. But I wanted to bring forward Bill and let him talk as much as possible today, so that people could be finding the connection to him and see who he is and how he can help you guys in the future. And I would like to have him on more times to talk about this type of thing. And I didn't want to be too much interfering in this discussion, because I was listening myself to the messages that Bill was giving. And, I hope myself that I will be able to live to be a better human every day, and that I can do things to myself and to humanity and to my family, and behave in a manner that, I would make them and myself much more happier in the future. So with that, I would like to thank you, Bill, to come here, and may God bless you. And the same thing for everyone else that is in the GoldFish report today. I'm very happy to have you here. I'm not a person that celebrates Halloween, but at the same time, I do respect the ones who do. So for those who do celebrate Halloween, I wish you all a Halloween. And with that, I would like to end this GoldFish report for this time. And please, God bless you. And like I stated, the reward is coming. It's done. And we're going to have a little celebration soon in Europe, which I invite you all to come to. Thank you much. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. What a wonderful message, and thanks for sharing those thoughts with us. We want to thank Bill so much for your time. Thanks for coming on and sharing your advice. And we know that this is something that we're probably going to talk about again, because we really want to get information out to people to help them. And we'll include in the links today any information that Bill may have. We can either reach him or you can follow some links that he might provide for us. I want to thank everybody. I had something I was going to share, but we're out of time. And, any kind of outlet that you can find that's creative, just go dance if you have to. Put some music on, go dance. Just do something to express that energy. Don't hurt anybody, don't hit anybody, and don't pick up any weapons, because that's not the answer. Because then you're going to have that karma to deal with, and you're going to have regret that you hurt somebody. And you're always going to be held accountable. And walk away. But, if you feel like you're getting to the point where you can't regulate or you can't control yourself, just walk away from the situation. And it's very hard to do, but you might be much happier with yourself for it afterwards. And we want to thank everyone for joining us. We want to thank our viewers. And if you want to follow us, you follow us on Facebook at the GoldFish Report. And also you can follow us on the globalmissionofpeace.com. And we have a little image that the ambassador was sharing with us. And don't forget, no matter what we talk about on the GoldFish Report or whatever's going on in your life, try to find a way to laugh a little bit, because laughter really is the best medicine. And I know that it is for me. And sometimes when I start, I can't stop. But try to find something that you can laugh at, because that really kind of helps you to put things into perspective, and it feels good in the soul. So here's a lovely picture of Global Mission of Peace team. And we have a message from the ambassador, and, who's got quite a sense of humor. And we want to thank everyone for joining us. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.
Thank you.